Welcome again to another episode of The Consistency Queen. My name is Elsa Morgan. I'm a wife, I'm a mum, and I'm also a business success coach for high-performing women who want to expand their vision, increase their influence, and also mega increase their income. And we help them to achieve all of that from vision to brand. I'm excited to speak with you today a little bit more about my story. Today, we're going to be talking about how I went from having a broke mindset to achieving $1 million and achieving also my first six-figure month. This is so important to speak to you because you see so many gurus out there that speak to this topic, and yet there's some of it that is simply not true. The whole narrative that achieving a $1 million is easy. I'm going to tell you, your first million is not easy at all. You literally have to totally move away from the person that you have been pre-$1 million to move into that next level version. And I'll go into that a little bit later on. So let me take you back to when I filed for bankruptcy, because it's really where my transformation really began then. But even further to that, just know that I was born into poverty. I had 2 dining chairs as my bed for the first 18 months of my life. My parents, hardworking parents, migrated to Australia in 1975 with $50 in their pocket and 1 suitcase between all 4 of us. And so from the very get-go, the scarcity mindset was definitely in play. And I'd always grown up with this idea that you had to work really, really hard for the dollar. And when you grow up with that mindset and that's all you know, then typically what tends to happen is you just believe that you have to keep working and 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 working to earn the income that you want to earn. And so I am here to tell you that that's not necessarily the case. Certainly not in a job or something that doesn't fulfill you. Make no mistakes, earning, life-changing income will require work. I make no bones about that, and I will always tell you the truth. However, having said that, even though I do work for the lifestyle that I have, I don't see it as work. I really love what I do, and I think it really comes down to you tapping into what you really love to do and what your gift zone in it is. And when you know your gift and you are in your gift zone, you don't see it as work, which is why some people say that it's not work. But again, let me take you back to 2009. I found myself in a situation where I was exiting out of a relationship, my previous marriage, and I was left with all the debt. I was left to pay all the bills, and I had creditors chasing me. And I won't go into the details why, but some of it was not entirely my fault. That's all I'm going to say to that. Although I will say that I take full responsibility for being in the position that I was in. And I think that is the very first lesson that I want to teach you on this podcast, is that if you find yourself in a situation where you are in a financial squeeze, or your financial situation is not desirable, it's not where you want it to be, the very first thing that you need to do is you need to accept that your current set of circumstances are the direct result of choices that you have made. A lot of people just don't want to take responsibility, and they will blame their job, they will blame, their family, they will blame the fact that they don't have time, etc. But ultimately, you put yourself in that situation, and you know what? You can actually change it. Most people believe that they don't have the opportunity to change, or they can't make changes in their life. I'm here to tell you that that's total BS. You absolutely can make change, and you can make different choices to go in a completely different direction. I'm living proof of that. You see, when I found myself head to toe in debt, and I really had 2 outcomes. I either had to pay a hefty debt by myself, some of which that debt was not mine, but because I was on joint loans with my previous husband, I had those creditors chasing me, that I had to wear the debt, and also other debt that was incurred as well. I either had to wear all of that, or I had to file for bankruptcy. Both were painful. Both were painful. But I believed that filing for bankruptcy was the lesser evil of the two. And I say that because I knew that whilst I would wipe the slate clean, I also was going to learn a lot of valuable lessons. And I remember sitting down with my parents, who had fought so hard to migrate to Australia, and I felt like such a failure as a daughter, telling them that I was going to be filing for bankruptcy, and they needed to know my reasons why. And I know my father has been he was so good with money, and he taught me a lot of the budgeting stuff that I do know. That I remember he said, if you're going to do this, remember to pick up the lessons. Remember that you need to learn from that. And I remember that so well, that I committed to learning from the process of filing. And so once you accept responsibility, and you're in that broke mindset, you're in that lack mentality, whatever decision you make from there, whether you go and seek financial help, whether you make any decisions going forward, because remember, I should actually say I'm not a financial advisor. I'm literally just sharing with you what I did. Okay. So, I reached out to an agency. They helped me to process all the paperwork, and literally then I owed money to the state. So the state trustee literally looked after all of my debts, and in the sense, like, processed all of it. But I wasn't allowed to take out credit for an extended period of time, for about 6 or 7 years. And I had to live paycheck to paycheck. That was it. And I can tell you that was the best learning that I could have had, coming from where I was. Because prior to that moment, I was a very different person. I valued different things, and I valued things that right now I look at them and I just go, wow, I can't believe I was that person. Making choices or different decisions like that radically change your life will radically change you too. And so you need to be prepared for that. So step 2, you can decide to change your life. You can change your circumstances, or you can stay where you are. I chose to change. I chose to learn the lessons. I chose to decide to move differently as a direct result of the decision I made. So once I filed for bankruptcy, I got to work. I got to work by going to see a psychologist, and had some therapy on my mindset and where I was at that time, because I wasn't in a good place. I was extremely stressed, and even though I had made some decisions, I still felt very guilty for where I was at. And so I had to process through all of that. And that's how I landed myself into running, because I had been a school sports captain and had done very well in cross country. And so my therapist suggested that maybe I should go back to that, because that truly made me happy as a young person. So I tapped into that, and, it was such profound advice, because I didn't know it then. But what she was actually helping me to tap into was my inner child, the happier version of my inner child. And so when your inner child is triggered or distressed, okay, that's when you have to do some inner work and therapy, and or like I do right now is journaling, etc. And I'll tap into that a little bit later on. But back then, she tapped into the happier version, and she said to me, what made you happy when you were younger? And I said, running. So tapping into that, there were so many benefits from that, because I had discipline, I had commitment, I had a routine, and I also had a lot of endorphins, and I had the dopamine hit, because once I completed all my training sessions, etc., I was just so excited that I was doing it. So I started moving away from that toxic, negative guilt state, and moving into a more positive energy, and surrounding myself with positive people who really looked after their body, their mind, and love chasing goals. And I tapped into that, and that decision totally changed my life as well. Coupled with the fact that once you start feeling good about yourself, you start making better choices about your finances as well. So I started using an Excel spreadsheet to start mapping out all of my expenses. So then I would then track where my money was going. And then I would forward plan to say, okay, when my pay comes in, I've got to pay this, and I've got to pay that, I've got to pay this, I've got to pay that. So then I knew what I was left over with every single month. And I would then use that to fund my life. And I did that for a very long time. And I did that successfully. And knowing that I could start making some meaningful changes, whilst also tapping into running, that made me happy. And I made new friends that had great mindset and great values that I, brought back into my life, because my value set I lost along the way sometime in my 30s. It was just a great feeling, which leads me into number 3, is your environment. And I will actually be doing a podcast about your environment and how that plays out. So it's such an important part of your journey if you don't pay attention to your environment. And there was one thing that I had learned through this process of, totally changing my life and who I was, is you definitely are the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. You see, who you hang around with and who you speak to can either really suppress you, or you can take on their energy and their frequency and the way that they think, or the people that you surround yourself with and speak to all the time can bring out the best in you. And you want to be hanging around people that are playing at the same rate as you want to play at, or higher, because you will quickly understand that these people are very, very strict with what they pay attention to and who they listen to and what they give their energy to and how they look after themselves and how they rest and the books that they read and the things that they focus on. And what I started to learn was, wow, I really was not a nice person, a good person to be around. And I was really negative, because I started to step into who I really was. And even then, I still wasn't the real me as I am now. And I'll get into that some point later on. But I will say this. Through the running and hanging around different people, and I started to really look after myself, and I had a different outlook on life and managing my money, I started to feel like, wow, I can actually come out of this. I can actually build a whole new life and start again. And I've hit rock bottom and I can start again. And I just started to trust and believe. And, there were times that my old programming came back, and I had, and I still do have this incredible friend who's a healer. And she was like my ability to believe again, if I can say that. Her name was Helen Fernandez. Highly recommend that you connect with her. She's up in Brisbane in Queensland. And I would visit her from time to time, and she would do some Reiki. And it would just reset me, and I'd keep going again. And so you need to surround yourself with people not only that are positive and working, at a higher rate than you, but also people that see the goodness in you. That they actually see the best in you. They see your greatness, because there's some times where you just don't see your greatness. So your environment is so important. And if you find yourself constantly making the same decisions, or constantly finding yourself in the same situation over and over again, one of the quickest ways that you can change that, aside from working on your mindset, is to change your environment, change the situation that you're in that moment, and get yourself out of there and put yourself in a more positive, and one that fosters positivity, because that's going to help you to channel that energy as well. Okay. And then as I was, running marathons, half marathons, by the way, I've run, 12 marathons and 26 half marathons. I think about that stat and I think, wow, like I'm really proud of myself, because, you know, the version of me that was the 20s and the 30s, I mean, I started running again in my late 30s, but my early 30s and my 20s, I just couldn't do that. And I will speak about that one day, but it was largely dependent on my environment. And so once I surrounded myself with the people that were more in alignment with who I wanted to become, that the greatness and my gift zones started to come out. So you'll start to feel more like your natural self when you start tapping into your gift zone. And that's really important. And your gift zone is really where you can do things naturally without feeling like you have to be somebody else. And so what I do today, for example, which is, you know, business coaching for women and putting out content on social media and creating content that is impactful and helping women to share their stories through our collaboration books and creating events. These are all things that are natural for me. So I know I'm in my gift zone, and I know that this is what I'm meant to be doing, and that excites me. But, you know, back in 2012, it was like almost 4 years into my bankruptcy, and I happened to meet the love of my life, my husband, Olaf. And I can tell you right now, if he had known the version of me pre-bankruptcy, I don't think that we would have ever have connected. But he met me at a time where I started the healing process, where I started to make changes in my life to start fostering the better version of me. And so we connected, and of course, we got married in 2015 after our son Alfie was born. And it was during this time that I discovered the online space, quite accidentally, by the way, because I wanted to spend more time with our son. I was a late mom. I think I had just turned 41, and I just didn't like the idea of having so much time at work, because back then I was working 60 to 70 hours a week and having very little time or very little energy to spend with our son, and him getting the leftover version of me. I didn't want that for him. And I knew what it felt like, because, you know, when I was growing up and I was young, my parents, the poor things, they would work 12-hour shifts in factories, and I really didn't get to connect with my folks. And I'm so grateful for everything that they've done for me. Like, they sacrificed so much for us, and they taught me some very strong values that I'm really grateful for. But I also knew that I wanted to have more time with my son. And so the online space came accidentally, because I wanted to lose the last 5 kilos of my weight. And a good friend of mine who I'd known for almost 20 years was talking about a product. Long story short, I opted in very skeptically, and it worked. Lost over 8 kilos, my husband as well. And people were then asking me, like, how did I do it? How did I do it? How did I lose all that weight? And so I realized then that you could make money online, and you can potentially build a business from home. And I discovered a brand new world. I thought to myself, wow, I can actually do this. So I worked it as a side hustle until 2018, when I retired. And it was in that moment that I realized that I could build something for myself, regardless of my background, which is so powerful, to think that you could go and build an empire even though you file for bankruptcy. Like, the market doesn't really care. I mean, yeah, they'll take note, but they don't really care that you were once bankrupt because you made poor choices. But all they care about right now is, how can you help them? And that empowered me. That fueled me to get better every day. And that made me believe again that maybe I could do something special with my life, that maybe, just maybe, I could just go again and create something that I could will off to my children. And of course, by 2018, we had our second child, our daughter, and I was all in. I knew that it wasn't no longer going to be a side hustle, and I retired from my corporate environment in 2018, and I've been in the online space full time since then. working part-time hours, but you know what I mean. So my point is that sometimes your version of what your road and where you want to go, you may have some sort of idea in your mind. You'll go, oh, this is the way I'm going to do it. But you're looking at it from your vantage point. You're looking at it from your background, your experience. And then what happens is, as you keep moving along, something will pop out of left field that you didn't even know could be a possibility. Always be open to just take a look, because you don't know where that will lead. That's exactly what happened in 2015. If I had not been open to trying this product, I would never have discovered the online space. Maybe down the track, but I don't even know if I would have opted in or anything like that. But this experience of trying this product and then having people inquire about, how I did it and going through that made me realize that you could have a home business, working it from your phone, around your family and traveling the world. And that's exactly what happened. We would travel the world. I'd speak on stages, earn trips, incentives. I'd earn car bonuses. It was all dependent on results. So I never, ever promise anything. I can only show you exactly what I have achieved. But I can tell you that all things are possible when you actually do the work. And there are things that you need to be doing every day. And I learned that, as I was building my business. Really from 2018, I became coachable. And I was very fortunate to be surrounded by some incredible people. And I'm forever grateful for the mentorship and all the people that were around me at that time. They were so supportive of my journey, and I'll never, ever take that away from them. And so I learned lessons that I needed, but I found myself constantly in the same situation over and over again, where I felt like, people were always against me. And I say that openly because I know a lot of people feel this way, but they don't talk about it. I want to talk about it. Not because I want to be negative. I just want you to know the truth. I want you to know that even though you see successful people online or in any business for that matter, that doesn't mean they don't have hang-ups. Some people just don't want to talk about it, but I feel that it is my duty as a business coach, as a thought leader in the space for women over 40 who are building businesses, that you've got to know that despite the success stories, that doesn't mean that we're programmed and we're numb to everything or immune to anything. Okay. So even though I had my success, I still had some programming I had to work through. I didn't know, believe it or not, I was so naive that I could actually heal from this thing. I didn't know that I could actually make some change, because up until 2020, when I actually sat on a virtual event that totally changed my life, I just thought, this is who I am. This is who I am. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people think that too. But what if I was to tell you that you could totally heal? I mean, I'm not going to say to you, you can heal like in 5 minutes. No. I mean, trauma and core wounds require, time. And for some people, some modalities will work, and for others, it's more effective. For me, I started off with hypnotherapy, and it was so profound. I just went, okay, I've got to do more of this. And so I went on a quest of finding all the different ways that I could start rewiring my thoughts and my behaviors. And when I realized that these were core wounds, how can I started healing from this? And the more that I asked how, and how do I get over this? How do I heal from this? How do I resolve this? I just kept asking the how. More and more mentors kept presenting. And I've met and locked arms with some incredible coaches who have changed my life. And part of that learning has been to be able to start healing that past, childhood trauma and all past, hurt that had shaped my behavior and my thoughts and the way that I saw life. And I started also rewiring my limiting beliefs. And the more that I did that, the more I healed my relationship with money, which I think is number 5, is the more that you work on yourself and the more that you understand yourself, you get to heal also your relationship with money. Because a lot of people come from a space of lack or come from a space of not feeling like they could handle money, or as soon as money comes in, money goes out, money comes in, money comes out. And if you're finding yourself in that situation, which at one point that was the case for me, then you've got to understand, why are you making those purchases? Why is money coming in? Like, when money comes in, what actually happens in terms of your thoughts, your mindset, your energy? Because as money is coming in, you need to be okay with it and celebrate that, and obviously pay your bills, etc. But what I was finding myself is that, especially in late 2019, because I was unhealed, is that as soon as money came in, money came out, and I just couldn't handle the money that was coming in, and I found myself again in a situation where credit cards were maxed out. And so in that moment, in late 2019, I found myself making a decision to sell my car to get myself to an event, because I didn't have enough to pay for an airfare ticket or hotel accommodation. And it was in that moment that I said to my husband, never again will I put us in this situation where I will need to sell my car again. Never again will I put us in a situation where we have $134 for Christmas for both of the kids. I will fight for our family. And it was from that moment in 2020, early 2020, that I decided to do real work, inner work on myself, and change my life as a direct result